Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing my 2025 TBR. So for this video, I have 10 books that I've selected that I want to absolutely get to this year. Some are a couple new releases, but most of them are like TBR veterans. They're like moldy, dusty, and crusty. I need to get to these immediately. First one is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Had on my TBR for so long. I'm not a big fan of like Greek myths, but the only reason I want to get to this is because I've always loved Achilles. Achilles is the only one that ever caught my interest, his character. So, and the reason it's called Song of Achilles, I want to explore that. You know, Achilles is known as the best of all the Greeks, and I think he's the son of a goddess, if I remember correctly. And this is following him and his relationship with Patroclus. The only reference I have of this, because it's completely different from the movie. In the movie Troy, I believe Patroclus was his cousin, but in this story, and I think the Iliad, they're like best friends. This is kind of like a reimagining of the Iliad, I believe. Now, I never read that. My dad kind of, my dad loves the Iliad, and that he talked to me about it, and I was like, I may want to read that. Just the history alone intrigues me, but I definitely want to read The Song of Achilles first. This is going to be a physical book read for me because I tried the audio and the pacing, I couldn't get on with it. It's something that I have to have my own narration for. Next one is The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. Now, a couple years ago, I read The Name of the Wind, and I'm one of those people that love it. And I think you fall in the camp of either you love it or you really don't. I really loved it. But knowing we're never going to get book 3, I had to like kind of mentally and emotionally prepare myself that, yeah, when you're done reading this, you're not getting anything else. So maybe in order to like test if you can do that, wait a while after you read book 1 and see if you can do it, if you can make it without yearning. And I did. I wasn't yearning for book 2 because I would have binged it. I would have touched it and like binged it, slowly dragged it out. So no, I think it'll be fine. I've prepared myself that I'm not going to get book 3. This is where it ends with the actual story, and now I'm ready. I'm ready to dive into the second book, which leads me into the next one that's on my absolute list to read. The Narrow Road in Between Desires? The Narrow Road Between Desires by Patrick Rothfuss. This is following our backstory to Bast. Bast is, if it's Bast or Bast, I call him Bast. He's Bast to me, okay? He was one of my favorite characters from Name of the Wind, and I want to be in his world. I want to know his story. I want to be a part of his story. I want to be in his mind. I want to know his feelings. I want to know everything about him. He intrigues me. I'm interested. I want that story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this one to after I read the second one. That way I have closure. I have like a little bit of closure to end the storyline. Like, okay, I'll end it with Bast, and that'll be how I end this adventure. Next up, it would be the Eragon series by Christopher Paolini. I want to do a reread of this. It's been years. It's been so long since I read this series. So this will be the second reread for me. I tried the audiobooks. I did not get on with it. I can't get on with the narrator. The narrator doesn't work for me. So I have to do the physical read for the series. And Murtagh or Murtagh, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but to me it's Murtagh. That was a new release, I believe, last year. I need a refresher. I tried to jump into that book and I was like, oh my God. And the way the book starts off, I remember, is like it's refreshing. He's like trying to refresh you for everything that just took place. So I was like, I don't like that. I do want to do a reread of this series just to kind of, I'm in the mood for dragons anyway. And this was the best dragon story I have ever read. This takes the cake. And the first book in this series, Christopher Paolini wrote this when he was 16 years old, y'all. And you would never know. You would never know. And if I'm reading the entire series in physical format, it's going to take me all year to read this. It'll be an all year series read. This one right here. Next up is Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. This is Feeney's new release. And the cover of this intrigues me because it has that rip down the center. So apparently this is a dark thriller about marriage and revenge. Our main character, author Grady Green, is having the worst, best day of his life. He calls his wife to share some exciting news as she is driving home. He hears Abby slam on the brakes, gets out of the car, then nothing. When he eventually finds her car by the cliff edge, the headlights are on, the driver door is open, her phone is still there, but his wife has just disappeared. A year later, Grady is still overcome with grief and desperate to know what happened to Abby. He can't sleep, he can't write, he travels to a tiny Scottish island to try to get his life back on track. Then he sees the impossible, a woman who looks exactly like his missing wife. My favorite two books, y'all know, that she has written are Daisy Darker and Rock, Paper, Scissors. I have read, because she had written one after that and before this one, that it was just okay. I gave it 4 stars. It was just okay. Nothing has topped. I want to see if this comes close to the feeling that those other two gave. But she has a thing. I was like, Rock, Paper, Scissors was set in the Scottish Highlands. And this one is now set in the Scottish Highlands. So our author has a love for the Scottish Highlands. Just saying. I am very intrigued by this. And of course, I'm really hoping for a 5-star. I mean, if it's 4, 4.5, I'm still going to be happy. That's a great excitement. I'm still excited with that rating. But I really want her to thrill me again because she is great at twists. If she can pull off twists like that, please give me another thrilling, exciting mystery that has plot twists that shock me. I want that. Next up is Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. I love Adrienne Young. She's one of my favorite authors. I think this one is about twins. A woman investigates her brother's mysterious death while coming to terms with her own haunting past. The only thing James and Johnny Golden have ever had is each other. For as long as she can remember, James' deep connection with her twin brother Johnny has gone beyond intuition. She can feel what he feels. James knows before her phone even rings that her brother is gone and that she's alone, truly alone for the first time in her life. She arrives in the rural town of Hawthorne, California to settle her brother's affair. She's forced to rehash the ominous past that her and her brother shared. But she soon discovers that the strange connection she had with Johnny isn't quite gone. And the more she immerses herself into his world, the more questions she has about the brother she thought she knew. She usually writes fantasy. Even the last one, it was like more contemporary. It was contemporary with fantasy, with magical realism. Like, it was contemporary magical realism, really, but it was like a mix of genres. So I'm curious if she is going to add in, if this is more magical realism like she did with Spells for Forgetting. So I'm really intrigued about where she's going to take this story. Next up will be The Heartbeat of Trees by Peter Wollheim. It's been on my TBR for so long, and I'm finally going to get to it because I'm being pulled. I'm being pulled right there. A return to the forest where trees have heartbeats and roots are like brains that extend underground. Peter Wollheim is a renowned forester, and he's known for writing about trees. So this isn't his first book on this, but this one has a more spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, energetic component to it, which is why I'm drawn to it. I want that spiritual story surrounding the trees and how they affect us. I definitely can't wait to get to this one. Next up is Iron to Iron by Ryan Groudon. Now this one is it's either a short story or novella. It's like kind of like a companion novella to the Wolf by Wolf duology. Wolf by Wolf is actually my favorite historical fiction fantasy. No, I'm not going to say that because Light Between Worlds takes that. Light Between Worlds would be my favorite. This would be my second favorite. Because it's so different. This has X-Men vibes to it. So you have like X-Men meets historical fiction, World War II era. It was such an exciting ride to explore that. And it's just, and like getting Japan involved in this and like writing, like, our story begins on a train. The year is 1956 and the Axis powers of the Third Reich and Imperial Japan rule. To commemorate their great victory, Hitler and Emperor Hirohito host the Axis Tour, an annual motorcycle race across their conjoined continents. The victor is awarded an audience with a highly reclusive Adolf Hitler at the Victor's Ball in Tokyo. Yale, a former Yale, I don't remember because it's been so long since I read that. A former death camp prisoner has witnessed too much suffering, and the 5 wolves tattooed on her arm are a constant reminder of the loved ones she has lost. The resistance has given her one goal: win the race and kill Hitler. A survival of painful human experimentation, she has the power to skin shift and must complete her mission by impersonating last year's only female racer. This deception becomes more difficult when Felix, her twin brother, and Luca, her former love interest, enter the race and watch her every move. High stakes, y'all. And you feel it, it's exciting, and the skin shifting X-Men superpower, it's fantastic. To Iron is the companion novel for the point of view of one of our I think it's the love interest of our main character, and this is going back into his, I think, backstory, a little bit of his backstory, but his point of view of the races, one of the races, because I think it was 2 races. So it's really short. I'm gonna get to that one. I'm in the mood to go back into this story and to get it from his point of view. It's gonna be good. Next up is Jade Tiger by Jen Reese. Look at this cover. Gorgeous. This has been on my TBR for years. It is time. Our main character, Sean, is half Chinese, half American, 100% kung fu badass. She's on a mission to recover 5 mystical jade animals before they fall into the wrong hands. Over 15 years ago, her mother led a secret society of female martial artists, y'all, born to protect the statues. When the Jade Circle lost 4 of the 5 statues during murderous attack on their sanctuary, 12-year-old Shane's destiny was sealed. It was she who carried the remaining tiger statue all the way to America. She who felt it clawing at her with the need to recover the crane, snake, leopard, and the dragon. The circle was destroyed that night, but she hasn't seen her mother since. ... I love kung fu. This is a female kung fu badass on top of it as our main character. So we're starting off when she was younger, her backstory of what happened, and then following her. Hopefully we follow, I mean, probably bouncing from timeline to timeline, but I would love to follow her to see that growth. I want to be a part of the change. I want to be a part of the training. Take me into that kung fu training. I am all for it. I love it. I'm in the mood. I'm really in the mood. This would have to be another physical read because I don't think, unless the audiobook becomes available to me through the library, right now it's not available. So this will be another physical read. Y'all know I can only get through like 1 a month. So with all the physical reads on this TBR, it's like, stay tuned to see which ones I accomplish. The premise excites me, okay? The premise. Now, it's all about the writing, how it's executed. That's with everything. So far, I have not read any Asian-inspired story that I got on with. The info dumpiness of the culture in the writing, it hasn't been executed for me to be able to enjoy it. So this one, I'm like, this is my last attempt. And because this was really my first attempt, because this was the first story that I had ever put on my TBR that was Asian inspired, simply because of the kung fu. I need kung fu female warrior badass main character. So I'm really just like, please. So part of me has put it off because I don't want to be disappointed. And lastly, The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. The Ninth Reign, again, TBR veteran. This was first recommended to me by Elle from Elliot Brooks. I think this is one of her favorite stories, one of her favorite fantasies or favorite stories of all time. This is the first book in the Winnowing Flame trilogy. Yeah, we are following. We have a couple main characters saying, the great city of Abora once glittered with gold, and now its streets are stalked by wolves. Wolves, I'm intrigued. Tourmaline the Oathless has no taste for sitting around waiting to die. while the realm of his storied ancestors falls to pieces. Talk about a guilt trip. So we have some humor in the summary. I like that. Better to be amongst the living where there are taverns full of women and wine. See, the sarcastic humor is pulling me in immediately. When eccentric explorer Lady Vincenza, vintage de Grozon, offers him employment, he sees an easy way out. Even when they are joined by a fugitive witch with a tendency to set things on fire, the prospect of facing down monsters and retrieving ancient artifacts is preferable to the abomination he left behind. So we have magic and war, monsters, retrieving artifacts. I'm really intrigued. And I'm not sure if you would define this as epic fantasy. I don't have a lot of epic fantasies that I really like. The closest, and because it's not, I don't think Name of the Wind, I don't think is considered an epic fantasy, but that's the closest to an epic fantasy that I have come. There's too much happening for me in an epic fantasy. But Name of the Wind worked for me. So this, I don't know, let me know in the comments below. Is this considered epic fantasy? Is it more like Name of the Wind in terms of, how would you define an epic fantasy? It's a good question because I don't read a lot of it, so I wouldn't really know, to be honest. But I do remember when Elliot Brooks was talking about this, I was sold. I was like, all right, I will give this a go. Those are my top 10 for my TBR that I absolutely want to get to for this year. Let me know in the comments down below if there's any on this list that you haven't heard of before that you want to add to your TBR. If there's any that you absolutely love that are 5 stars and you want to tell me about it, please let me know. Especially if you have a 5-star on this list, please tell me which one it is and why. That may make me pick one over, get to one quicker than another. If you like this video, give me that thumbs up and don't forget to smash that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming bookish content. And as always, happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.